Enter Furhaven, a realm where sentient animals roam and thrive. Choose your fur type and delve into a world brimming with rich lore and diverse cultures. Unleash your creativity as you craft a unique character, blending fur traits, backstories, and mechanics for an unforgettable journey in this vibrant setting.
Hello and welcome, heroes, to Crit Academy Dice and Dialogue. I'm your host, Justin.
I'm your co-host, Ian.
And I'm your co-host, Alex.
Last time on Dice and Dialogue Furhaven, we talked about the overall concept and the furs and their cultures. Today we're going to get a little bit more meta, and we're going to talk about building characters, some of our favorite, classes and mechanics for the species and all that stuff.
The part I enjoy.
Yes.
If I may say and introduce this, I am thoroughly impressed in their simplification and generalizations of how they did that. I am very impressed with the changes that they made to the 5e character creation in order to make it, I guess, kid-friendly, but also more streamlined. I think they did a really good job.
And I think that brought up a few questions in our own games because we were looking for specific details on things and they don't exist.
Yep.
Like even when I was using my archer, it just says his quills for the porcupine. It just says you do an AoE for 2d6 damage.
Yep.
Doesn't say the range.
Yep.
Nothing. And I thought that was an error, but it's not at all.
Or just one or two times too where it's like, okay, so I can roll on the table, I can pick which feature I want, and I get this other feature that I roll for, and that's my creature. But at the same time, it's like, but if I pick this creature, I get this extra bonus feature because reasons. It's like, I get quills now, because I'm a porcupine.
Which is unique to that one.
Did anyone else get the feeling that this was written specifically to be theater of the mind?
Yes.
Okay, I'm glad I wasn't the only one.
I think that's why some of the stuff are so light on the details.
How do you guys feel about that?
You had to open up that can of worms again. Let's just say that we've gotten to, I won't say heated, but definitely passionate arguments of theater of the mind versus maps.
And you're still wrong.
No, I'm not.
Okay. Let's agree
for children,
that you're wrong.
Correct.
But for children, do you think it's better for children for theater of the mind?
It depends on the kid.
Yeah.
It really is.
Because,
like, for example, like, Justin's argument usually has been he feels theater of the mind is more flexible and much more easy to wing it that way, whereas for me, I like battle maps because everybody's on the same page. Everybody knows what's
quite literally the same page.
Yeah. Because, like, I remember a few times where, like, in the past, for example, where it's like, okay, I cast Fireball. Who can I hit? You can hit this many people. Unless you watch allies. You can hit all dozens of them. Like, why? Whereas, if it's a battle map, you have to question that.
And I think that's a debate for an entire 5-episode series, but we're gonna leave it at that. I think for the purposes of kids,
yes,
and parenting, in attention span, I think, in my opinion, theater of the mind is probably better for younger kids. But older kids, I think that would probably benefit from the battle map.
Although you could turn the argument though. Okay, two things. One, the one target for younger kids is the board game, physical objects. And B, when you have physical objects, you have something right there that can hold their attention.
Yeah, I guess something other than dice.
See, this is
dice towers are common.
This is such an interesting argument because I'm thinking of it from an educator's perspective. With a map, you can teach them to count. You can teach them 5 feet. You can teach them to add. There's a lot of mathematical teaching moments that can happen with a map. But with theater of the mind, it feels more like parents playing and just having fun. So I can see it. I can see it both ways. But I do agree that I think theater of the mind would be more entertaining for kids with ADHD or like a shorter attention span in general.
So all of you that are out there listening right now, I now will have 2 open spots on the show because now neither of them get to agree 100% with me, and that's not okay. No, I'm just kidding. I'll allow it this time. No, you actually make a really good point, and that's not something I had really thought about, which he's probably said, and I just ignore him a lot. But
Well, but you already did it up front. Already say depends on the kid,
right, but there the shape thing in geometry I hadn't really even considered, right?
Yep.
Especially when you're battling against feathers that fly too, right?
Yep.
So teaching about gravity is going to be a really fun one. Things that go up often must come down. So let's get into some of the class details. There are some of the race details first. So each of us will kind of talk about what our favorite race was from a mechanics perspective. Sorry, a species. It's not a race. In 5e, it's races. They're changing it. It's species in Furhaven too.
Well, depending on which RPG and which edition you go by too. So
every game is different, so call it whatever you want, I guess. In this one, it's species.
yes.
So we're going to each pick one. We're going to talk about our favorites. And from a mechanical standpoint, not from necessarily a story standpoint.
Yep.
Right? Because I absolutely loved the Weefers. Wow, that really sounds like some sort of like rude word. A Weefer. Weefers. Actually were my favorite from a story perspective, but I actually love the porcupine as my favorite mechanic, and I'm going to tell you why. So,
yep, those are cupines.
Is that the reference to the thing from
Family Feud? Yes.
Family Feud? He goes, "Hey, name something that goes with pork." Cupine, Steve. What?
That broke Steve there.
So, it's worth noting that the category for the porcupine is odd furs, which is one of the subcategories, which I think is cool, including like anteaters, because that is weird, and platypuses and armadillos. So, anyways, I picked it specifically because I loved the idea. It's got a porcupine quill darts where it can pull out quills and use it as a thrown weapon, right?
Yep.
On top of that, it can release a multi-directional AoE and shoot them out in all directions, which once again was just a really cool mechanic. Now, I liked it because I knew I wanted to be a ranger. And I was like, if I'm the ranger, I can use quills as arrows. And that was the direction I went. And I thought that was such a cool mechanic for the porcupine. It makes sense.
Yep.
And I did every opportunity in the game. I tried to bring my quills into it. Talked about how he's lonely because he can't get close to anyone because he hurts them, right? That is both physical and an emotional reaction, right? Because there's so much behind both of those.
Yep.
But from a mechanic standpoint, it was 100% the AoE thing and tying it in with my primary class. There was one other thing, but I can't seem to find the specific spot with the porcupine. But where it has the AoE quill darts. But once again, you get the familial bonuses, which give you static abilities or stat bonuses.
Quill darts is you can pull quills out to use as thrown weapons. You can pull out up to 6 per day. That's what quill dart says.
Yes, but there's another actual AoE ability that they get too that I couldn't find where it's at. It's on the pre-generated character, so I know it's in there. They changed it.
In that draft, anyway, did they actually give a damage attack to the quills?
Huh? I assume it's an improvised weapon.
Yeah.
That you would be proficient with. So like a dart, probably.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Like I said, just one of those ambiguous things in the draft.
Draft. So I wanted to touch on the familial bonus types because while every stat bonus is cool, it gives a description of why your character has that particular stat.
Yep.
So let's say I picked the charisma. You come from a line of entertainers, orators, or leaders, and you have inherited the knack for saying what other people want to hear. So it's not just that I got to pick a bonus. It gave me a little bit of story to fill in my character, which is awesome. Did you notice when you pick other bonuses, it doesn't do that in 5e as far as I know?
Mm-mm. Yeah, it's only in background that it does that. So that's really cool that they brought that into like characters.
Or class.
What do you mean? Is it in the options in class too?
Well, I meant in the sense of like to give a description of.
Oh yeah, no,
Yeah.
this is just part of your familial bonus though,
Yeah.
right? And it tells you why. For instance, if I chose lucky, it says when you roll a 1 on an attack roll, ability check, or saving throw, you can re-roll it. This one is just a mechanic. But then I go to another one and it says your family elders have taught you the value of thinking before acting, and you have shown a similar aptitude. That's wisdom. So I really liked the odd fur build.
Yep.
I liked playing a porcupine. There's so much you can do with a porcupine. Like, that's just is story fun. I think he ducked underneath a table, and then the squills came up through the bottom of the table and while he was hiding.
Like,
So
I mean, shoot, I also did consider something like the scalies, like snakes especially, or some of the, what do they call the amphibians? Fibs, for similar reasons too.
is that the one you want to talk about? Particular one, or you want to talk about turtle?
I'll just talk in general.
Okay.
Just because like fibs, like they do have like some poison options, or like snakes have some venom options.
What's the difference?
When you ingest, one is injected.
Okay. So is there a fur type that you really thought was designed well and you like the mechanics of?
I mean, I went with the turtle just because in our game, because they got most of their AC, which is why I doubled down on the way of the shell monk, for example.
Right.
And in that case, I'm like, well, let's just keep this simple. At the very least, was my train of thought, and it worked just fine. And I can't really pick a favorite one in particular because just going through a lot of them, like, I can do this, this, or this, or this, or this will go well this class, or...
Well, do you want to pick one with particularly interesting features?
Well, let's go with the scales then, actually, like the snakes. I believe they'll be in the dry scale section.
Okay, when I find it, I'll let you know.
Although I guess there was a sea snakes, which were in the wet scale section.
You have a wet snake.
Sea snakes.
I was originally, before you picked snakes, I was going to pick the cottonmouth because I'm from Texas and we have cottonmouths, and I've been face to face with the cottonmouth, and they do a very good job of describing what happens to you whenever you get bit by a cottonmouth. So but now I got to go find someone else because.
Well, by all means, go ahead.
Why don't you just take that?
Yeah.
Yeah, so sure. The scales is probably one of my favorite things, not just because they are reptiles and I'm very excited to see reptiles, but also because they're very strangely accurate to the reptile that they are, and it makes me wonder if this person consulted like a zoologist or something like that. Like maybe they consulted like somebody who is in pet or something. Because the things that they chose are actually very, very interesting. So the what you were talking about with the venom, very interesting. They have paralysis venom, sleep venom, burning pain, necrotic pain, itching pain, and fever, which are all things that do indeed happen. And yes, burning pain and necrotic pain are two different kinds of venom from two different kinds of snakes. And I'm very, very intrigued to know how they figured this out. But the cottonmouth, I was going to pick the cottonmouth, and if I played, I would play a cottonmouth. Your venom inflicts damage as if you were in the next higher level category on the venom effect table. At level 1, your venom does an additional 1d4 damage. At level 4, it does an additional 2d6 because your venom actually scales, unlike breath weapon. So that's really nice. Scales.
Yeah.
Hey, I did it. But I would definitely say that this is just lovely. It's lovely to see someone be so thoughtful about the animals that they're choosing. And the other thing is that the special abilities that you get for animals are samples. So let's say your son recently found out what a reticulated python is and that it's 12 feet long, and it's like, oh my god, reticulated pythons. So they decide they want to be a reticulated python. Yeah, reticulated pythons are like 12 feet long. And they're like, they eat rabbits. That's their food, is rabbits.
Who knows that information?
Me, because I like reptiles. And
so, I was a snake growing up.
I didn't even know that was a snake. Reticulated?
Reticulated python.
What does reticulated mean? I don't even know what that means.
I have no idea, actually.
No one knows what that means.
Alicia, you have a task. Okay,
But,
sorry. I never heard that before, and I was like, how do you even know that?
But
Well, how do most 5 years know about dinosaurs?
the special abilities are samples, so you would be able to like change or manipulate any one of the special abilities to be able to fit an animal that is not already there, and I think that that's very, very cool.
Yeah.
Do they
Or
have
I think in some
descriptors?
cases, if you really want a particular animal, but like the various like sections of your wheel don't quite fit one, you could probably easily homebrew like one from another. Like, okay, I want to be like a armadillo, for example, but I don't feel like the armadillo, if it's the thick hide enough, I might just use the turtle stat block.
That's a really good point.
Yeah.
I like that. And that's the benefit of it, is most of it is to the point where it can be popped in and popped out, and they're similar enough in power that it shouldn't be a big deal, but it encourages that sort of process, right? Now, we don't expect new GMs to be able to do that on the fly, but something to keep in mind if a young child or player decides they want to do something different, like what Ian just suggested, is a great alternative to trying to figure out how to do it yourself, right? I do like the effects of the different venoms that are listed here, from -5 penalties to like dexterity abilities, which is interesting, to just straight out damage ones. One thing it touches on a little bit is like the consecutive the length of them. Like the necrotic pain venom, for instance, requires a con save, and then they take 1d4 damage on if they are successful, and half as much on they take 1d8 damage or half as much on a success. But this damage cannot be healed by normal means; it can only be cured by cured disease, which is awesome. Also, Alicia has confirmed that a reticulated means resembling a network, having the form or appearance of a net or netting. I assume that alludes to its unique, the reticulated spider snakes.
Yes.
Yep, design.
Yep.
Of course, when I look at that, it looks the exact same as all of them. I don't look at a lot of snakes. They're scary. But
I love
if
snakes.
Furhaven has taught me anything, it's just because they're reserved and quiet. Not that they're bad. Until they bite you, then it's a problem. So why don't we? So we talked about a couple of the species, and there's a bunch of others, right? Whether you choose the arachnids or the fins, which are very much like fish type people, or that fall within that, like frogs and amphibians and stuff. Would that be under fibs? Would frog be under fins or fibs?
Fibs, because they're amphibians.
Okay, duds in the name, amphibian. All right. Anyways, so I think that's really good.
There's not really a lobster option, is there?
I bet you there could be.
Yeah, you probably could homebrew one easily.
Would that be a wet scales though? Well, they don't have scales. They have chitin.
Chitin, yeah.
Anyways, so the different classes. Let's have a good introduction here that we didn't really touch on before.
Yeah.
The classes in Aloria define a character's livelihood, skills, and abilities essential for survival in the wild. Though some are content to be live peaceful in villages, the allure of adventure and what's outside to many younglings is a powerful drive for discovery of treasure, looking for unique monsters to battle to protect their area, driving away foes, and protecting innocent people. And so each of the classes in here are based off of, I don't think I saw one that wasn't already part of the 5th edition core mechanics.
Yeah.
So they're not bringing any new classes,
And
but they bring but they do have some variations on some of the classics.
Now, unfortunately, it's not all the classes in the draft document had new archetypes.
Right.
I don't know if it plans to go and keeping it that way in some cases, but
Yeah.
But the ones I did interested were new. I did like a lot of them. Like,
Do you want to talk about one in specific?
I'm gonna go ahead and just mention like the Waves to Shell monk, because
Is that the one you played?
yes,
I hadn't known.
just because they just inherently get a boost to their AC, which granted is a very simple mechanic, but it's very straightforward.
Right.
And they get a lot of other abilities as they level up that enhances their defense in some way. And I think they could, if I recall correctly, can have like key spikes, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
So it's like, that's awesome.
I do, and so that's an interesting. That's one of the few that is kind of unique.
Yeah.
Which I thought was really nice.
Like, it started off straightforward, but they got more and more features as they leveled up.
And that's the point, right? And
Yeah.
some of these aren't nearly as complicated as they would be otherwise, right?
But they don't necessarily need to be either.
But that's the point, right?
Yeah.
This particular setting isn't. You're not looking for super complex characters. You're looking for ones that younger kids can easily understand and wrap their head around. Here's what it's supposed to do. That's all I really need to know.
I just want to say that this comes with pre-generated characters,
and they're adorable.
And my favorite has to be the skunk rogue, which is like
Sage. Yes,
such a good pairing. A skunk rogue, let's go. But they do have, I think, 4 or 5 things already pre-made for you in case your kids just can't sit during that, because I know I can't sit during character creation, and I'm 28.
Youngin'.
It is worth noting that all the pre-gens that are in this are the ones that come with the board game.
Yeah.
And so they got really beautiful artwork. Oh, I don't think we've touched on the fact that Furhaven comes with like STL 3D print files for like all the characters, a bunch of the like core buildings within Furhaven and all that stuff. And it makes it just that much more engaging. So,
they lean very heavily into 3D printing with this game.
So back to Ian's original statement on whether it'd be better to do tabletop grid. This is encouraging that with the STL files. So
I like how they have QR codes and links to websites you can go to get to those files.
Yeah. I just want to touch on that because I realized we hadn't actually touched on that.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off there. Do you want to continue there?
Oh no, I just, there are a lot of kids out there that like they want to play these kinds of games, but they just want to create a character and go. They don't really. So creating a character is actually quite simplified, at least from what I understand. It's quite simplified from 5e, but it still holds it's like a skeleton of what 5e is. That's what it seems like to me.
Yeah.
Yep, I would agree with that.
And so, but I'm just looking at the hedgehog ones, and the things that it's really cool. I mean, like as a kid, someone telling me I could have spiked armor, a ball of spikes, or I can intimidate people with my spikes. Which one do you want? I mean, as a kid, like, oh my God, like what, like
that's a lot of options.
It's amazing. It's like, which one do I pick? And so I have a neighbor who is a 5th grader, and the 5th grader loves me and loves my dog. And I imagine her sitting here just trying so hard to decide whether she wants to perform a ball of spikes attack, or if she wants to intimidate people by pushing out her quills and looking all big and tough,
Yep. I like that. And I think that's worth kind of what's noting. You talked about it being kind of a skeleton, and I want to make sure everyone knows that that's not in a bad way, right?
No,
it's a simplification, which some of the heavy duty mechanic crunchers already think 5e is streamlined, but I think that's part of its success. To be honest, it's easy to get friends into. We don't have a whole semester to teach people Pathfinder building character progression.
Now, I'll admit, I was kind of half surprised that this was aimed for kids, that they kept the traditional D&D stats and just didn't just go straight modifiers.
So Ian had mentioned about whether the book is going to contain all of the class features or not from the SRD or the OGL, so that you got all the abilities.
Yeah.
Because these really don't have, this just has like the core abilities of each of the classes, which we would refer to as the subclasses.
Right.
It does actually mention that these are meant to work with it.
Yeah.
So the hope is that they do decide to add that all to it. So it's all contained within one document.
Right, because I would prefer this to be a standalone product than to be used as a supplement, if you will, to the 5th edition.
But I can understand them putting all the resources in, making all the new stuff, and then adding the other stuff later. So let's hope that's the key.
So we just want to try not to make assumptions because we're going off a draft version.
Yeah. So One thing that they really did before I picked the class that I think was done really, really well was they did a really good job reflavoring some existing abilities. Like the barbarians, the honored dead is basically a totem barbarian for the most part, with some minor changes. And I think that's they basically use that outline. Some of the abilities are actually different, but you can see where the format and where it stems from, but it's different enough that I think they did a really good job making it feel like something entirely new. While some of the abilities are actually new.
Because like with the Tome Barbarian, they had to be more like you're channeling this animal and you give them their abilities, whereas here it's like you channeled the souls of these individuals who, well, are those animals. So,
which is awesome because now you're like, if you harness the thing of a scale, it was some legendary scale from the past, right?
So basically, in a way, it's kind of like the Tome Barbarian, but with the flavor of the ancestral barbarian.
That is apt. That's an apt description. If you don't know what we're talking about, that's some other 5e stuff that already exists.
Yeah.
So one of the things that really stood out to me was the cleric, because they did something unique. Their core ability, when you cast Bane or Blessing, because it's the cleric domain of tranquility.
Yes.
And the first ability you get for that the second level ability you get is such a nod to that that focus. It's awesome. When you second level, when you cast Bane or Blessing spell, you automatically cast the other as well as desired. That is awesome.
Kind of ridiculous potentially,
and
actually.
It's very powerful because those are both concentration spells. One buffs your allies' chance to hit and succeed on stuff, and one debuffs the enemies. The problem I always had with Bane is it's so easy to resist. So you feel like you wasted a slot. So I feel like this kind of found a balance. But then when I think that they hit up to 3 people each, maybe they. I think it's really cool. I really, really like it.
Oh, I think it's neat.
I think that it should have been when you cast it, you can choose to alter it to do 1 Bane and 1 Blessing, as opposed to 3 of both.
Yeah. Or 1 target each.
Or that's what I meant. One Blessing and 1 Bane at the same time, right?
Yeah.
So 1 target each.
Yeah. So 3 of each.
Yeah, we're on the same page. Yeah, we're on the same page. Just worded it a little differently, and I thought that was really, really cool. It fits within the theme. The other thing I thought was surprising, though, was that it does the Undead Reaver. There's not a lot of undead in this monsters options.
Rebuttal. You can just simply say, hey, take a Screecher. I just slapped the undead label on it.
Right, okay. Yeah, okay. Everything is undead then, I guess, if you want it to be. Which is not wrong, but my point is that other GMs that are new may not know that.
Right.
Yeah.
And so that, to me, I think by making the Bane and Blessing stronger, they weakened the 6th level ability. And I'm wondering if that was intentional. Do you know what I mean? Because adding your Wisdom modifier damage to only undead is very specific. But then again, they double down on it. At 8th level, you get Holy Retribution, which means when you do Divine Strikes against undead, you do it 2 times the radiant damage.
Right.
So once again, this is a very strong theme with it. And I want to be very clear. I love it. As long as you know you're going to be fighting something like that.
I'm just surprised that it's undeads and not insects.
And there's the point I was end up getting to. It didn't feel like it fit the theme of everything else.
Yeah.
That's fair.
That was my concern. I think this is a really interesting design, and it's the reason why I wanted to talk about it, because I like the Bane and Blessing seems very powerful. But when you start looking at the stuff beyond that's very, very situational, I think that's why that core ability is so strong. Now, I don't know for certain, but to me, that's an interesting way to do it. You front load it, and then give it all these other powerful abilities, because double damage on anything, well, you already should be doing double damage if it's radiant against undead, right? Aren't they vulnerable to radiant or not always?
You would think so, but no.
I don't think it's not actually that way in 5e, is it?
No.
So,
I would think so.
So, and once again, it still stays on that into 17. Improve Destroy Undead. All types of undead now get a -4 to their saving throws against your Destroy Undead ability. So once again, really, really powerful front-loaded ability, but all the rest are good in only one circumstance. That doesn't seem to fit the theme of the rest of the
Multi-class option, maybe?
well, if you multi-class and take it, then you get all the up and none of the down. I don't know. I think the designs is interesting. I love how powerful they are.
Yeah.
I agree with Alex's assessment that maybe it being focused on insects would have been better.
Yeah.
Because those are more common, but those are the most common enemies. So maybe that's too common, making everything too potent. Now, once again, this is just a draft. Maybe this has changed. I'd be really interested in seeing it. You do get access to, new domain features, which includes bonus weapon proficiency, detect undead, a 6th level sped undead no, that's not a spell feature. You get Bane and Bless, you get aid, spiritual weapon, daylight, remove curse, banishment, death ward, dispel evil, and hollow. So those are all very paladin. Some of those are paladin-like abilities, right?
Yep.
Banishment is definitely a paladin one. Hollow is paladin. So this is kind of like a mix of cleric and paladin.
Yep.
I think.
That's fair.
And so that's the reason I want to talk about that one, because I just think it really stood out as far as what I used to seeing. Is there another class that you guys think is worth kind of touching on? Because the last one I was interested in is the bard, but
I kind of like the sorcerer one.
You want to talk about the sorcerer one?
Yeah.
What do you like about it? Well, what is a sorcerer for those that are listening for the first time and may not know? I know we touched on it briefly last episode. Was that this episode?
Yes. Sorcerers are basically like those who channel magic from their bloodline and their ancestry, not from
born with it.
In other words,
born to be bad.
In other words, they have a. Now that'd be a warlock. Never mind.
Do you like the warlock instead, or
no? I was gonna say
making deals.
I was gonna say they were born into a family with magic, or have like magic sugar daddies.
Yeah, that's definitely magic sugar daddies is warlocks.
Yeah.
All right. What was interesting about the sorcerer
or clerics
or clerics? Those are holy daddies.
Depends on which god you worship.
What if one's maybe regular sorcerer or clerics have sugar daddies, and the warlocks are just gold diggers? It's not that they have a sugar daddy; they're just taking advantage of somebody with power, right?
Amazing.
Our show used to not be suitable for children, so I'm still working on that. All right, so tell us about the sorcerer.
Basically, the sorcerers have a core ability called the Touch Bloodline, and their magic comes from the blood flowing through them that's passed down through the generations of their ancestors who could also wield magic. And this kind of adds a ancestral heritage to them and personal connection to their magical abilities, making them distinct from the other spellcasters. And yes, I described the sorcerers in general, but I also read off the show notes. So
very general,
because I don't have the PDF pulled up.
Yeah, I got it pulled up, so I'm looking at everything.
Yeah.
One thing that stands out is your sorcerer can choose a damage type.
Yes. That's the thing I liked.
Okay, why?
Well, it helps you tailor to what you want.
Why do you like the damage affinity?
Because for me, adjusting damage types for me kind of fits in with the sorcerer, because there are some sorcerer points that could do that. Like you saw in like Tasha's.
But they can do it without requiring sorcerer points.
Right. Just to me, like that aspect seemed to fit with the sorcerer more than does like to me, like wizards learn spells, whereas sorcerers like can modify them. Mm-hmm. So that kind of stuck with that flavor.
Right. I like that. And it kind of touches a little bit on this. When you gain an affinity for a specific damage type,
yes,
and roll a d4 and consult the damage type, and consult the damage type table below. Now, once again, it's following that random theme it wants you to roll. Mm-hmm. You can probably just pick, right? But it does say that from this moment forward, whenever you cast a spell that deals that damage type, you get to add your charisma modifier to the damage. At the same time, you can spend 1 sorcery point to gain resistance to that damage type for 1 hour.
Yeah.
So I really like this. I think it's interesting. It also stacks, I assume, with some of the sorcerer meta magic, right?
Yeah. And I think to a degree, yeah, there were some parallels to the Draconic Bloodline Sorcerer,
yeah.
but I think it was different enough.
Yeah, you get all the cool stuff with the Draconic minus you get the kind of lower level stuff of the Draconic, but with more control.
Yeah.
So I think it fits that theme really good. And one thing I was really hoping for, and it didn't actually do it, it's when you can actually change the element. That's not actually one of these features. It just encourages you to use that type of magic.
Yeah.
I really would have liked to see a new sorcerer meta magic added for this one, right? Where you can, change it. Whatever. Can you imagine instead of a fireball, it's a snowball?
Isn't that an option in Tasha's, or am I thinking something else?
I have no idea. It
Okay.
might be. I know it's something we've been asking for a while. What do you think, Alex?
So I think that the classes are really cool, but this is the one place where I really do have to give a ding. Whenever it comes to magic wielding classes, you have to be certain species in order to play certain classes or have certain things happen. So if you go to like the Bard's College and stuff, you have to be a feather, and it actually literally says underneath that section of the thing, the strict
Feathers
order,
only.
feathers only. And I'm not a big fan of those kind of restrictions. I saw them in the book and I was like, but I'm not a big fan of those kind of restrictions. And that is something that I would definitely want to tell a parent, because if the kid wants to play a certain thing, they might completely and utterly lose interest whenever they're told no. And yeah, so that's like the one ding that I have to give to this whole thing, is that you have to play a wizard or to do certain things, you have to be a feather.
Well, with the Bard thing, yeah, I was kind of surprised.
The Bard thing specifically says it. I don't know that the wizard does, but it's just general consensus.
Well, wizards say you can, but just know that feathers will
hunt you down.
It says in the flavor text about the feathers that feathers are the only ones that are allowed to go to school or have proper training or proper mentorship whenever it comes to magic using, and all other magic users will be hunted down. And so a lot of people practice magic in secret, and you cannot get formal training in any way, shape, or form for any magic, including Bard. And I just think that's...
Yeah, I think and mechanically, as far as the way I'm looking at it, it only specifically applies to the Bard. I didn't see another one. The wizard thing is frowned upon. And so I understand the flavor, but that is still just flavor. Otherwise it would say, anybody else.
I kind of know maybe one or two if there's going to be other options for different types of Ian mentioned it, and you just mentioned about being an underground learning. Maybe you don't learn it through training. You find old books and you read them, right? And you're trying to learn them. And it seemed to me like it did say you can learn from another hedge wizard, so it seems to me like less going to school, more having an apprenticeship.
Yeah, which still means they're common enough. But the concern is, and I think this is a great opportunity for the game master, is if they're not careful, the hedge wizards might find out. But think about this: how does a hedge wizard discern the difference between a warlock, a wizard, and a sorcerer?
How good is their charisma score at lying?
Well, to me, I would say they can't, right? They shouldn't be able to tell the difference unless that answer is given to them.
Right.
So, does that mean feathers hunt down all casters?
I think that's what it says. Or implies, at least.
Well, it implied to me in the text, from what I recall anyway, they only hunt down wizards. They tolerate everything else.
So is there a way that they detect the difference? There would have to be.
It doesn't say.
But I think that as a GM, we would have to come up with that solution.
Right.
Otherwise, I would just pretend to be a sorcerer. Oh, I hail from an ancient lineage of wizards or sorcerers.
Right. And I don't think you're wrong. Even I thought about that too when I was thinking of that mole kid originally. But back to, I guess it doesn't really say, does it?
Yeah. But once again, that's the book encourages us to build interesting stories and concepts, and I think it does that indirectly sometimes too, with stuff like this, where hey, we didn't tell you how to do this, so figure it out. I've read some books where, and I can't remember the name of them, where, groups hunt certain types of spellcasters and they use gems that like glow certain colors around different ones, right?
Or maybe different types of magic use different types of techniques that are kind of like giveaways.
Well, that's true. Maybe no sorcerers can raise dead. As soon as you start raising a walking undead fur skeletons around, they're like, you got to come with us, bro.
Or like a draconic wizard might they just use the same hand gestures, or they just become more scaly or get like dragonized the moment they cast spells. That goes away afterwards.
Interesting. I like it.
That's of course using the draconic sorcerer example from
and I think that, and this comes back to, I think that adds story opportunities. Now, the last thing I want to touch on is how important your choice of fur matters as far as the story goes. The choice of a fur or any other sentient animal race in the world of Furhaven goes kind of beyond the aesthetics and plays a significant role in the character's development, which we've been talking about. But not just like the mechanics, the roleplay opportunities, interactions with the setting. Each fur possesses distinct traits and cultural backgrounds and physical attributes that shape their role in society. Now, this is very different from what 5th edition and D&D in general encourages. It encourages you to come up with unique characters, right?
Yeah.
Unique backstories. This one is saying, don't do that. This is what the society expects. And so in order to engage in the world for a better social construct or social interaction, having certain personality traits is actually expected.
I think it is there in 5th edition. It's just that pushes hard.
Yeah, I mean, it's light, but this one is pushing, this is how these creatures behave. And that's not saying you can't go outside those norms.
Yeah, and it does say, like, you have these cities, but you still see these other types of furs, if you will.
Yes, that are just kind of in other areas, right?
Yeah.
So you could gravitate to that if you really wanted to. But I think for kids, getting the expectation wrong of how others behave, if you play a chipmunk, nope, not chipmunk. If you play a porcupine, they are reclusive. They are quiet. They can be heroic. They want to help, but they're so used to their own body being dangerous to others. They're very closed. They're very closed. And so when we played our game, I specifically picked the porcupine because it was so different than the type of characters I usually play.
Yep.
It was very timid. He's a coward, but is heroic when he needs to be. And was very, well, guys, I'm not so sure that we should do that. Maybe, just, who is that? You run and duck and hide behind the table, because a feather walked in,
Where I was trying to play, like, my turtle monk, Giovanni. Yes, I picked an Italian name.
He totally gave off the mobster vibe, by the way.
I was trying to go with emotionally detached.
That still says mobster, doesn't it? It's Italian and detached.
The mentality I was approaching the character at the very least was summed up with the sentence: there is no good or bad experiences, only experiences.
Yeah. But anyways, I think that's really good, by the way.
Yeah.
I think that is a real critical aspect of Furhaven that's really pushed really well. Do you have any thoughts on that, Alex?
I'm just really impressed with this book. I mean, like, the thing is for me is that this has kept kids in mind this entire time, because we all know that there's that one kid that's going to sit there and play a raptor and then is just going to murder all of the other kids. And like, to me, the reason why these expectations are so clearly laid out is so that kids understand and have structure around the fact that they're not allowed to murder hobo. No. Bad. And so I think that they did this in a great way, and I'm just continuously impressed with this book and how it keeps children in mind and children's antics in mind.
And I do think that, just like any other game, mind you, that there should be plenty of communication between the GMs and the players to help temper everyone's expectations about what's expected and so forth.
I agree 100%, and that's kind of the point. Remember,
Yeah.
when you're playing this game, and there's so much to about this game. You could, if you already play 5e, you can easily import some of the other stuff that you want to add, and it won't really have that big of an impact. But remember, creating a compelling and diverse character in Furhaven involves not just the class type, but intertwining the fur type, the backstory, and the setting itself. By leveraging kind of these types of reflavoring class mechanics, like we did with the porcupine's quills, right?
Yep.
It really helps your character fit and build out a specific personality that's unique to you, but still fits within the dichotomy of the rest of the social expectation of your character. And the hope, and as your point, Alex, is hopefully that eliminates the murder hobo aspect of the game, which is what often tends to happen, right? Each of these choices you make and decisions you make contribute to an immersive and engaging role-playing experience in Furhaven or 5e or any other RPG that you play. And I hope that as you delve into this and play it, that becomes more of the push that the GM puts on the players, specifically the younger ones. If Furhaven sounds just like the setting that you're looking for, you can visit their website and store for a late pledge, or their Kickstarter page. Visit rebrand.ly/critFurhaven and consider checking it out. Like I said, it's a really, really great setting book, and you could play it with the church kids on off days, and nobody will think you're teaching them the mystic devil worship that is Dungeons and Dragons, because they'll never know. Just call it Furhaven.
I still think it's
they
hilarious.
Don't actually read that stuff.
I still think it's hilarious. My mom to this day is still one of those D&D as a devil mindsets, and yet, what if she came home, all my friends are there, and we were playing Pathfinder, and she did better than I.
Because they don't know. It's the name, right? And also, people that in that time were very easily manipulated by...
Still are.
Actually, I would say it's even worse now, to be honest. And now, onto our System Agnostics tips and tricks.
Today's magic item, the Everflowing Quill. It seems to be an ordinary, yet elegantly crafted, refined feather quill. And, however, there's a little bit more to it than that. This is, after all, a magical item. It has infinite ink. It just never runs out. And it refills every time you uncap the quill.
Stop, that's
so you can just keep
good.
on writing. I know.
Stop, that's so good. Okay.
I know, but wait! There is more. Whenever the wielder writes with the Everflowing Quill, the ink takes on a life of its own. The words and drawings on the page come alive, shifting and emanating to depict the written content. And this enchantment enhances storytelling and can be used to convey messages, maybe create some small illusions on the page itself, or provide visual aids during gameplay. And also, there's so much more. By simply touching the quill to any written material, the quill can magically copy the contents onto another piece of parchment. Useful for duplicating important documents, maybe some spell scrolls, or even some secret messages for later analysis. And it can also, if you find a document or anything that's written in other languages, it can transcribe it to your language that you understand. And that's always a handy feature. And last but not least, and I can see how this could come into play in some games, but not all.
Mm-hmm.
In the hands of a spellcaster, the quill can provide a minor magical boost. When you use this to transcribe a spell into the spellbook, it enhances the accuracy and clarity of the written incantations, increasing the chance of successful spellcasting, and reducing the risk of critical failures.
Yep.
Yeah.
Now, so from a 5e perspective, that is re-rolling ones on attack rolls or forcing a enemy to re-roll a save if they get a 20.
Yep.
So I think that's good. What do you guys think?
Okay,
like it.
So in Alex's Bombastic Oddity, which is the book Justin and I did together, I have not one, but 2 D100 charts of knickknacks. One of them being magical knickknacks, one of them being not magical knickknacks. And let me tell you, this is a magical knickknack of the utmost quality.
What do you think's the most interesting thing about this item, you guys?
Not telling the person using it that it's magical and it just starts dancing off the page.
Ooh, I like that.
Why is this ink never running out? I haven't dipped it yet.
The one thing I really love about this is, first of all, it's a non-combat item. And secondly, it brings shenanigans to the game.
I do believe it is a deceptively powerful item, even though it's not in combat, just because it can copy scrolls.
Yep. But you have to have a scroll to copy. So.
Right. But when you do, free money.
Oh, shit. That should be very limited. I'm just going to say right now.
Hence why I said deceptively powerful.
It is. Wow. I didn't even really think about... Well, yeah, I mean, yeah. It needs to be limited action. You know, like once a week or once every 10 days or something like that, or once I don't know. Something. All right. Anyways, I really like the concept behind this because it focuses on an aspect of the game that doesn't get a lot of attention of any fantasy game, which is the variance in languages that are existent in the world. For me, especially after reading through like the Furhaven and stuff, one of my things, and I'm sure that Ian can attest to this, I always try to include multiple languages and writings in the games that I run. Like when we did, a big example was when we went to Ravnica, right? They had to learn to read and write the language.
Yep.
That was huge. That was a big aspect of it, right? And that more than once, it led to some misunderstandings because I
thought you said they speak common. They do. Replican common.
But it led to some misunderstandings due to, we're trying to learn this and I learned it, but I didn't learn it well, right? And that can lead to people being offended indirectly, or not understanding what the goal is. But more importantly, it allows us to explore player character backgrounds of why they would know some of this unique stuff.
I still think one of the most hilarious things I've seen involving language barriers was when someone I knew when they were kids, they had the German exchange students stay over. And when their mom asked them if they wanted seconds, the exchange student replied, "Oh, no, thank you. I'm all fed up with their cooking."
Okay.
And everyone on the table just burst out laughing.
That's funny.
Because they knew what he meant, but they knew he also didn't realize what he said.
Those are the best.
Yep.
So when you're creating something like this in your game, make sure you give an opportunity for it to really shine. The reason I say that is because on its own, unless you set up circumstances where this has value, it probably won't, right? Writing letters and stuff doesn't come up very often unless you specifically pick the forgery kit or something that allows your character to do that. Something I haven't seen done, and honestly I'm guilty of this, is getting in contact with adventurers is not always easy.
Nope.
So if I'm a mentor or a quest giver and you're traveling the world, getting messages back and forth is kind of important. Likewise, if you show up in a city where you're not familiar, but you're not familiar with, but your characters have earned a bit of renown, then getting a letter sent to you becomes a way to get them to meet with people of influence. It goes the other way too. As a player, if I've got a pen that I can have writing copies of things for me, I will be certainly having it forging documents. I will certainly be having it write letters of nobility. But more importantly, having it taking notes of conversations we're having if it's animated.
This is one of those things that is just so fun, and I think especially if a player is like freaks out about it like I did, that I would write a place for it into the campaign. Like I would alter my plans in order to make sure that this becomes a valuable and worthwhile tool.
I agree very much.
I had a laugh briefly when you said like you go to a town that has customs you're not familiar with, and I immediately pictured the party rogue trying to pick somebody's pocket, only for another rogue suddenly to grab their wrist. Hold up, do you have a permit to pick that guy's pocket?
I like that.
Wait, what? You just can't pick a guy's pocket. There are rules here. First off, you gotta join the Thieves Union.
The Union. Oh, that's funny.
Thieves Guild.
All right, that'll do it for our magic item, the Everlasting Quill.
Our Game Master tip is probably one of the personally most difficult things to try to commit to in the game, but also one of the most important, and is unleashing the power of consequences. Listen to me. Listen. The game is so much better when their actions have consequences, when their actions have reactions, when their choices shape the world. Everything just gets better because they are the ones embracing the world. Their agency is actually making a difference in the world, even if it's a bad idea, even if it's a bad thing. Listen, whether it's a simple interaction with an NPC or like a combat counter or a moral dilemma, their actions need to have consequences. And sometimes it can be very difficult for us to do that because we want everyone to have fun, and it's not fun to be jailed for the night in a jail that has like anti-magic properties. But sometimes they got to be jailed for a night, you know? It happens. And in the end, it does make the game more fun for not just them, but for you as well, to allow people to actually have dynamic, immersive world. You know, it's a lot better. So I know that it's a really difficult thing to do sometimes, but let their choices shape the world and let the players have consequences to their actions. Do you guys struggle with this?
To a point.
No.
I know you don't.
I have no problem thinking, this is how the character would react to this. That's going to be a problem for them. And the reason I don't, because that's something that I've been pushing since I started 4th edition.
Why are the town guards trying to arrest us? What you think was going to happen when you threw a firebolt at the enemy thief in the middle of the marketplace?
Yeah. And that's exactly it. And it's not just about stuff like that. I think about that as part of my DMing style. We just talked about an encounter that we did with the cosmic collision or cosmic encounter or whatever, where they got to stop the Doomstar from coming in and destroying the planet. I don't think the two options is binary of they succeed and it misses, or they fail and it hits. And because of that sort of mentality, I always think of how their roles and their actions are going to impact something. Specifically when it comes to challenging assumptions, right? It's easy to get into this situation where there's certain expectations of a consequence of an action. In the example I just mentioned, it goes this way or it goes that way, and that's it. But then for me, I said, well, what happens if they only kind of succeed? That's when you get the Doomstar exploding and just creating Swiss cheese out of the planet, because that becomes another one, another result or a consequence of an action. Not that they didn't try, their action was to stop it, but because of the choices in their roles, which are randomized, that choice and that consequence has a range of success, right? Whether it misses, whether it hits and destroys everything, whether it turns it to Swiss cheese, or maybe they succeed but barely, and so now you have two planets circling each other. Those sorts of things are important to me in my way of DMing, because people are more liable to pay attention and make more well-informed decisions when they've been had the experience of, hey, listen, last time we did that, it didn't go well, so let's change it up a little bit. So for me, it's always about considering unexpected twists that arise from the decisions they make. Now, I know that's something that's unique to my game GMing style, which not everyone has. And so hopefully that'll change, because that's an important aspect, you know. Consequences of getting hired and taking out a goblin cave. It's great, right? You clear it out. We're no longer under threat. What's a consequence of that, though? It's the right thing to do, right?
Well, it turns out the goblins were actually keeping something else in check with their mere presence.
Yeah. They would sacrifice goblins monthly to feed this bulette. And now that they're not there feeding it, it's coming to the town. And you feed that reaction. That could be days later, adventures later, years later. Hey, the town you guys visited before is now attacked by a bulette. Maybe you took out the goblins at level 1. Now you're level 6. And you come back and find out where it came from, and it was a pit that the goblins were chucking each other down to keep it sated so we wouldn't eat them. You know what I mean? That to me is the things that I think about when I play, and why I think of what are the other consequences we could add to this game, to this choice. So that's just the way I've been practicing for so long, I think, though. So,
ooh, or like that one episode of Shield Hero, where a adventurer came through, killed a dragon, moved on. Dragon corpse started decomposing, spread the disease in the nearby village.
Yes, that is a really, really great example.
Yep.
I think we've talked about that in the show once before.
We did.
Because that's exactly it. He did the right thing. He helped, but his lack of thorough work, and consideration of the consequences led to death and poisoning to the village.
Yep.
So they did right, but they didn't understand the consequences. That's how I like to think about things, and I encourage everyone else to try it at least once.
Or didn't follow through.
Huh?
Or didn't follow through when they didn't necessarily realize they had to.
Right. So that'll do it for our Game Master tip, unleashing consequences. Join us in 2 weeks when we discuss Furhaven campaign overview and additional tips to enhance your game. If you enjoyed the show and you want to support us, please head on over to critacademy.com, pick out some of our fat loots. We've got capes and crooks. We got a plethora of class options to really enhance not only your 5e game, but also your Furhaven game if you want. Yeah. The idea of picking up our summoner class and being an animal that summons another animal just sounds awesome. Like, I want to be a chipmunk that rides atop of like a big dog.
That is amazing.
Or a T-Rex.
Can you summon a T-Rex?
I'm sure you can at some point.
Okay, then, on a T-Rex. And nobody knows that there's a chipmunk on the back of this T-Rex that is controlling it. It's just a giant stompy T-Rex.
I'm now picturing a small chipmunk whipping a giant ape like Ratatouille.
All right. So check out our loot. Follow us on social media. Leave us a review. Visit us on our Patreon page, where you can now try a 7-day free trial, get access to some of our loot. And if you really enjoy it and you want more, please consider joining Patreon. I am your host, Justin.
I'm your co-host, Ian.
And I'm your co-host, Alex. Thanks for listening.
Have fun on your adventures and don't be a dick.